Like, she is crapping on the original production. I was scared of it. Oh, it was so weird. It was a stalker. Like, I feel like if you are taking on the most iconic Disney role ever, genuinely, like this was the most prolific Disney film, I feel like you should kind of have some sort of reverence for the original production, for what it meant. It kind of seems like maybe this path that I'm taking right now is the path that Rachel Zegler should have taken instead of just running her mouth for the last 3 years.
The apple obviously was poisoned over 2 years ago at this point, but the fatal results are just now sinking in.
Oh boy.
1% evil, 99% hot gas.
Rachel Zegler's Snow White was supposed to be a sure thing, a $250 million Disney remake, based on one of the most iconic fairy tales of all time. How could it possibly go wrong? Well, here we are, 3 weekends in, and it's in freefall. The numbers are worse than anyone expected, and now it's on track to become one of the biggest box office disasters in Disney history. The opening was already rough, just $42 million in the US. That was followed by a massive 66% drop in its second weekend. And now in its third, a brutal 58% drop, losing nearly 500 theaters and pulling in just $6.1 million. Analysts are calling it unprecedented. This isn't just a flop, it's a collapse. And fans aren't just staying home, they're walking away altogether. Meanwhile, Brett Cooper is watching from the sidelines, and she just confirmed something major. She's still playing Snow White. Her version, the one that stays true to the original story, is moving forward. And fans? They're paying attention. While Rachel Zegler's Snow White is losing steam by the hour, Brett's version is gaining traction without even trying. She left the Daily Wire, started her own show, and still found a way to keep her Snow White project alive. Now it feels like the timing couldn't be more perfect. Disney is sinking, Cooper is rising, and the contrast between the two couldn't be more clear. Let's be honest, this movie never had a fair shot after those early interviews. Zegler said she hated the original. She said the prince was a stalker. She wanted Snow White to lead instead of love, and fans weren't having it. On top of that, Disney replaced the dwarfs with awkward CGI characters, which only added more fuel to the fire. Now the reviews are in, and they're not good. A Negiven Shazalek on Rotten Tomatoes. A B+ on CinemaScore. And online, people are dragging it. The vibe is bad. The box office is worse. And to make matters more painful, a Minecraft movie just opened and is already stealing what little momentum Snow White had left. With just $168 million earned globally, Snow White isn't even close to breaking even. It's projected to lose Disney at least $115 million. And the damage isn't stopping there. Insiders say Disney has already pulled the plug on the live-action Tangled movie. Executives are nervous. They don't want another disaster. As for Zegler, she's stuck doing emotional interviews, trying to explain herself, while fans keep pointing back to everything she's already said. She's frustrated, she's exhausted, and it's starting to show. Even the on-screen tension with Gal Gadot raised eyebrows, with reports of the two stars barely speaking during filming. So here we are. The movie that was once positioned as Disney's next big hit is now fighting to avoid becoming the lowest-grossing live-action remake ever. And at the same time, Brett Cooper is stepping into the spotlight, calm, collected, and ready to bring a different version of Snow White to the screen.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
So Snow White is officially ranked the worst movie of all time, reaching now a 1.8. People on the internet think, you know what, it should be even worse. And honestly, I don't disagree with them. These 7 CGI monstrosities. You're telling me, Disney, you could not find 7 actors to portray the iconic 7 dwarfs? For me, the fact that they literally took jobs for a role that is really hard for these kind of actors, that alone, this this movie deserves all the hate. Honestly, Warwick Davis would have been a hilarious ass Grumpy.
To be honest, none of this is surprising given all of the drama that's been surrounding this film ever since it was announced. You had a bunch of people who did not agree with the casting of Snow White, and then Rachel Zegler only added fuel to the fire when she called the original Snow White movie dated. A lot of people feel like she was being disrespectful by saying that. In addition to her saying that there would be no prince saving the princess in this movie, many people wondered why remake it at all.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
So it's funny to me when they're talking about being proactive and making this all relevant, as if manipulation does not happen in 2023, as if young people are still not easily swayed. Like, wasn't Snow White 14 or 15 in the original story? I'm sorry that at that age, she didn't know everything, that she was not the girl bossiest feminist leader queen yet. Like, I'm sorry that's not good enough for you. That's just the story. This is still relevant. Being a young, innocent person, that's something we have all experienced. That is relevant in itself. Again, the values are timeless. You do not need to change them.
After months of controversy and a brutal box office flop, Disney's Snow White has crashed with just $87 million worldwide, far below what they needed to cover the $270 million budget. And behind the scenes, the blame game has started. But instead of facing the backlash or owning any of the missteps, Rachel Zegler is allegedly lashing out at someone else, Brett Cooper. Sources say Zegler's been secretly bitter for a while, ever since fans started saying Brett should have been Snow White before the film even came out. And now, with Disney's version officially tanking, that frustration is boiling over. To make things worse for Zegler, Brett Cooper's Snow White and the Evil Queen, produced by The Daily Wire, is already gaining buzz, even before its release. Cooper's version promises to stay true to the original Brothers Grimm story, with themes of good versus evil, beauty versus vanity, and no political messaging. That's exactly what a lot of fans were asking for. Meanwhile, Zegler's version took a different route. In interviews, she mocked the prince, called the 1937 original weird, and said her Snow White won't dream about love or be saved by anyone. She made it clear this remake was about rewriting the story through a modern, feminist lens, something that didn't sit well with longtime Disney fans or critics on the right. Now, with the movie bombing, fans are louder than ever, saying Brett Cooper should have been cast in the first place. Social media is full of comparisons, and many are planning to skip Disney's version altogether just to support Cooper's take later this year. Even more embarrassing? Brett Cooper hasn't even released her film yet, and people are already calling it the real Snow White.
Go there, you stand, and you mold yourself to the character. And you lose a lot of yourself in doing that if you hate the project and if you hate the character you're playing. But if you're able to love the character, if you're able to love the production and the story you're telling, it makes it so much more meaningful and you feel like you're actually part of something that can impact audiences, can impact the culture in a really important way.
So let's close with Snow White and the Evil Queen. So you picked to play Snow White?
Yes. So we announced it when we announced Bentke, and I get a text from Jeremy who just goes, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm at my apartment." And he says, "I need you to meet me at the Precinct." I was like, yes. So if Jeremy asks anything, you say, "Yes, I'll be there." Sprint out of the apartment. I get to the lobby of the Precinct, sit down, and he says, "We want to do something that could be, it might be impossible." And this was at the time that it was during the SAG strike, but everything was going viral about Disney Snow White.
Everything Disney.
Everything
perversion
Disney.
of the social
Yes.
order and the demolition of the narrative.
Yep.
What of the,
The destruction of values.
traditional narrative?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's just rewrite this.
It'd be great every time.
Oh yeah, we'll improve it.
Yeah.
These
With their
ancient
not so
stories.
secret gay agenda. And so that was in the middle of all of this happening, and I had obviously been following it. I had done episodes about it.
No, the gay agenda is a mask. It's just a destructive agenda.
It is.
It's just it's a demolition agenda with
Of all traditional values.
We're pro inclusion. That's the mask. That's the mask. That's so that if you attack it, you sound like a bigot.
Yeah, then you can't. It's their wall.
Yeah, no, we're just bringing in the marginalized. It's like, wait till you invite the real monsters out from underneath the rocks. You're bringing in the marginalized. We're starting to see that happen already. Yeah, you went to see Jeremy, and he.
Yes. So I went to see Jeremy, and this was as everything with Snow White was happening, and people were very disappointed, very upset about the way that Disney was rolling out this project. The way that they
they
were.
picked such a fun actress too.
During a podcast with Dr. Jordan Peterson, Cooper took subtle shots at Disney, saying audiences were disappointed with how the studio handled the remake. She promised her version would focus on truth, beauty, and tradition, something she says the Disney film completely abandoned. And now, insiders say Rachel Zegler is watching all this unfold, and she's mad. Mad at the comparisons. Mad that fans are turning on her, and mad that the spotlight she once had is quickly being taken over by Brett Cooper. Let's break it down. How Rachel Zegler's frustration is turning into personal attacks, why Brett Cooper's version is already stealing attention, and how this Snow White rivalry just became the biggest battle Disney never saw coming.
Snow White is actually written by Greta Gerwig, who also wrote Barbie and Lady Bird and Frances Ha, and we have been talking about her a lot recently because of Barbie, but also she's one of my favorite writers and directors. I've liked her since high school, so this pains me because what she is doing with Snow White seems absolutely terrible.
Dude, I trusted you. I trusted her.
Because she's involved, I want to believe that this movie will have some redeeming qualities. Will I actually watch it? Probably not, but I hope that it does for those of you who do watch it. But the lead actresses, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, are making it very, very difficult for me to believe that there's anything redeeming about this project whatsoever. Now, I am sure that we have all seen this viral clip, but let's just watch again.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
Oh my god, it's a really incredible story. You're making this girl boss story based on an important father figure. Her father tells her to be brave and strong. Don't you think that there's a, something redeeming about men in this story? Oh, that just stood out to me. This is the first time I noticed that, even though I've watched this like 6 times now.
It's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign.
I am. Why do they look so smug? They both have that look on their face, just like the feminists, like, yeah, we're so much better than you. Anyway.
Recent developments have added a new layer of intrigue to the story of Snow White and the fierce competition between Brett Cooper and Rachel Zegler. Brett Cooper, an iconic YouTube sensation, has been thrust into the spotlight not just for her role in a rival adaptation of Snow White by the Daily Wire, but also for the contentious circumstances surrounding her departure from the Daily Wire itself. Allegedly forced out in what sources describe as a hostile move, Cooper has remained publicly silent about the matter, fueling speculation about the financial troubles plaguing the Daily Wire and the increasingly erratic behavior of CEO Jeremy Boring. Despite these challenges, Cooper's casting as Snow White has been celebrated as a triumph by fans craving a return to the timeless magic and romance that made the story a classic. Her approach, grounded in the original narrative's values, has drawn widespread praise, much to the chagrin of Rachel Zegler. Zegler, who faced intense backlash for her modernized, feminist interpretation of the character, has not held back her disdain for Cooper's faithful adaptation. Labeling her critics as outdated, Zegler's fiery comments have only deepened the controversy. This isn't just a tale of two Snow Whites, it's a cultural clash that's exposing deep divides in Hollywood and beyond. Cooper's interpretation is being hailed as a breath of fresh air, while Zegler's approach continues to polarize audiences. With the Daily Wire's financial woes adding further drama, the battle for Snow White has taken on new dimensions, captivating fans and critics alike. The question is, did Disney go too far by rewriting a beloved classic to fit today's cultural narratives? Or is Brett Cooper's traditional take exactly what audiences have been craving? Buckle up, because this story is just getting started.
Literally the one in that trailer, and I'm still like so excited and I get chills.
There I am, Gary, there I am.
The whole thing is just so cool. The moment when the music starts to crescendo as I turn around, when I first heard the music, I was like, stop right there. That's just so amazing. Funnily enough, I recorded the song without hearing the rest of the trailer's score, so I had no idea what it would sound like. I had no idea what Jeremy and his team were envisioning, and he was actually writing the song and writing the music in between takes while he was directing Pendragon. We were texting back and forth trying to figure out the right key and what it was going to sound like, and he was sending me messages like, I'm so sorry, I'm in the middle of, a glacier valley in Italy and my songs aren't going through, but we figured it out.
And I saw myself on screen and I just wanted to throw up. I was so happy about it, and it was the most incredible experience, and the fan reaction was insane. We didn't even see what they were clapping for. I think it was good. I don't know.
We didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Compounding the drama, the Daily Wire itself is reportedly grappling with massive financial troubles. Internal whispers suggest that CEO Jeremy Boring has been frantically bugging the office, possibly in an attempt to address the brewing crisis. This turmoil adds another layer of intrigue to Cooper's transition into her new role as Snow White in a rival production. The timing of these developments could not be more significant. As Cooper steps into the spotlight for her portrayal of Snow White, the tension between her and her former employer raises questions about the behind-the-scenes dynamics at the Daily Wire. Could this upheaval affect her ability to fully embrace her new role? Or will it only solidify her position as a resilient figure in this high-stakes Hollywood showdown? The Daily Wire's struggles also cast a shadow on its ambitious venture into the entertainment industry. With Cooper's Snow White project gaining traction and praise for its faithfulness to the original tale, the question remains whether the Daily Wire can recover from these internal challenges and maintain its foothold in the cultural landscape. Now, let's step back a bit to fully understand what happened.
I'm a narcissist. Original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Okay.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. That people will assume is a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
I say, if I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
And we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
I mean, a couple of things. Obviously, dude, so much has gone on. Trailers have come out. Like, that's crazy pants. Are you kidding me? I'm like, I never wanted to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Right. Every time that a celebrity gets like one DM that says KYS, they're like, I'm getting death threats! Someone save me, but not a prince! Don't.
Anybody but a prince!
Don't you dare save me.
Well, she like, what if somebody, she's like, I'm getting these death threats, and the cops were like, well, save yourself. Like,
yeah, you're a girl
I saw that.
boss, aren't you?
I saw that interview. Save yourself. You'll be fine.
What is this movie all about? Like, what started it off? Where did you get the first idea for it? And what are you hoping to accomplish with this one?
So we got the idea for it literally the day that Rachel Zegler did an interview in which she said that she hated the original Snow White and wanted to rip the guts out of it.
Weird.
And then Disney released those ridiculous cast photos of dwarves that were not dwarves, the multiracial, multi-ethnic, tall people and one dwarf. This is how we make decisions at the Daily Wire. I literally just emailed that to my business partner, Jeremy Boring, and I was like, we should do something like this. And Jeremy's like, okay, we're just going to make Snow White, but we're going to do it to all the specs, with music, with singing, with the original storyline in classic fashion that imbibes from the original well of the values. Specifically because if Disney wants to cede that field to us, we'd be fools not to take it. And we're kind of shocked by the fact that no other studio...
The reaction that came with the Disney version of Snow White. There's certainly been people who have been less enthusiastic about the live action remakes they've done. I'm definitely one of them. It was very much a case of, okay, here comes another one. Then they cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White, and you think, okay, well, it's a race swap of the character, and it seems a bit nonsensical given the nature of the Germanic legend. But okay, fine.
And the name of the movie, and the plot of the movie.
Exactly.
And the fact that if you want, like, I don't care about the skin color of the characters, but when the literal line from the movie is skin as white as snow,
yeah,
and that's why her name is Snow White.
On the surface, this could be written off as two actresses with conflicting creative visions. But when we dig deeper, it becomes clear that Zegler's reaction is less about defending storytelling principles and more about navigating a high-stakes competition for public approval. It's hard to ignore the competitive dynamic between Zegler and Cooper. Zegler, once heralded as a rising Disney star, now faces a reputational crisis after her dismissive comments about the original Snow White alienated fans. Enter Brett Cooper, a non-Hollywood outsider from a politically charged platform who has embraced the role of Snow White with genuine enthusiasm for the classic tale. Cooper's growing popularity and positive reception have undoubtedly rattled Zegler, who may see this as a direct threat to her relevance and credibility in the role. The timing of Zegler's criticism, coming just as the buzz around Cooper's performance gains momentum, makes it hard not to view this as an attempt to undercut her competition. Zegler's insecurity seems to be a driving force behind her criticisms. Her portrayal of Snow White has already been derided as overly modernized and disconnected from the character's roots, while her own comments, such as admitting she's only seen the original film once and hated it, have done little to endear her to fans of the franchise. In contrast, Cooper's reverence for the original material and her personal connection to the role have struck a chord with audiences. Zegler's dismissive attitude toward Cooper's approach, coupled with her defensiveness in interviews, hints at a deeper fear of being overshadowed by someone who, ironically, isn't a traditional Hollywood actress. While rivalry and insecurity undoubtedly play a role, Zegler's stance also reflects a genuine difference in storytelling philosophy. Her vision for Snow White as a fearless, independent leader is part of a broader Hollywood trend of modernizing beloved characters to align with contemporary values. Cooper, on the other hand, represents a counter-movement that prioritizes preserving the integrity of timeless narratives. Zegler's criticisms of Cooper may stem from a belief that adhering to the traditional Snow White story is regressive or out of touch. However, her disdain for the classic themes of love and innocence feels more like a dismissal of what made the story resonate across generations. Zegler's criticism ultimately reveals more about her than about Cooper. It suggests an actress struggling to reconcile her role as a public figure with her artistic choices. Her attacks on Cooper, whether they stem from rivalry, insecurity, or disagreement, seem miscalculated. Instead of taking accountability for her divisive portrayal, Zegler has chosen to redirect the conversation, attempting to delegitimize Cooper's version. Ironically, this only reinforces Cooper's position as a champion for those who feel modern Hollywood has lost its way. Meanwhile, fans of Snow White, tired of Hollywood's attempts to reinvent their childhood classics, appear to be rallying behind Cooper's unapologetically traditional interpretation. What could have been a healthy debate about creative direction now looks like a desperate attempt by Zegler to reclaim a spotlight that's steadily shifting toward her rival.
Guys, and welcome to the Brett Cooper Show. I am so happy that you guys found me over here on this new channel. I am so excited to start this new chapter with you guys. We have been hard at work behind the scenes, literally boots on the ground, me and my 80-year-old neighborhood grandpa putting shiplap up on the ceilings to cover up my 90s popcorn ceilings that I thought you guys would not find aesthetically pleasing on a set. We're literally in a room at my house. We put this all together. Anyway, I am so excited to bring this new show to you and show you guys what we have been working on. So my goal with this new show is to foster understanding, to go deeper and extract substance in the stories and the issues that matter most to us, the issues that impact us on a daily, personal basis.
Rachel Zegler may have thought she was the face of Snow White, but the latest developments have left her completely overshadowed and possibly speechless. While she has been at the center of relentless backlash over her dismissive take on the Disney classic, Brett Cooper's sudden rise as a rival, Snow White has completely changed the narrative. But Cooper isn't just challenging Zegler on screen. She's also in the middle of her own dramatic battle behind the scenes, making this the biggest Snow White showdown yet. For months, Zegler has been facing fierce criticism after resurfaced interviews showed her openly mocking the 1937 Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, calling it weird and outdated while bragging that her version would be completely different. Fans were furious, especially when she claimed Prince Charming was a stalker and that her Snow White wouldn't be saved by a prince. Instead of embracing the story's classic themes, Zegler seemed determined to rewrite them entirely, alienating Disney's core audience. Things only got worse when it was revealed that the live-action Snow White would be ditching the Seven Dwarfs in favor of a diverse group of magical bandits, an announcement that even Hollywood insiders found baffling. Critics accused Zegler of pushing an agenda rather than respecting the beloved fairy tale, and her attitude toward the film's legacy didn't help. When asked about working with the original movie's legacy, Zegler rolled her eyes and joked that she only watched it once and found it unrelatable. Disney initially tried to defend Zegler, but the backlash was overwhelming. filming. The controversy grew so intense that the studio was forced to delay Snow White's release to 2025, an unprecedented move that signaled trouble behind the scenes. Some reports even suggested that Disney was quietly reworking the film in response to the criticism, fearing another The Marvel-style box office disaster. And just as Zegler's Snow White seemed to be crumbling, Brett Cooper stepped into the picture with a rival film that did what Disney refused to do: stay true to the original story. Unlike Zegler's reimagined feminist take, Snow White and the Evil Queen, produced by the Daily Wire, promises to embrace the classic fairy tale, complete with a traditional Snow White and an actual prince. Suddenly, Zegler wasn't the only Snow White in town, and her version was looking worse by comparison. Fans who had rejected Disney's modernized remake immediately rallied around Cooper's film, praising it as the real Snow White that audiences wanted. The contrast couldn't be more glaring. While Zegler's version was mired in controversy and delays, Cooper's Snow White was being celebrated as a return to storytelling that actually respects its source material. But Cooper's rise to the spotlight wasn't without its own drama. Behind the scenes, she was dealing with an unexpected fallout with her former employer, the Daily Wire. Cooper, who had been one of the company's biggest stars, suddenly left her show the comments section in what many believe was a bitter split. Some speculated she was pushed out due to financial cuts, while others believed it was due to internal disagreements, especially since Cooper remained silent on key political issues, while the Daily Wire commentators loudly took sides.
I'm really emotional, and I'm also really tired. I never wanted to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats. And maybe that's a weird takeaway.
Even more bad news for Disney's Snow White remake coming out next year.
I'm a narcissist.
There's another Snow White movie competing with it. It's called Snow White and the Evil Queen, and the producer promises to be more faithful to the spirit of the original animated classic.
Walt once said about Snow White, "To me, I thought it was the perfect story." Unfortunately, the company Disney founded doesn't agree with their founder.
Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot interview talking about this dumbass new Snow White live action movie is so funny. Everyone working on this movie seems to hate the original. Why didn't we just make a brand new movie? I don't know, Jack. I ask that every single time I do one of these episodes. I would really, really love to know. There's a couple of TikToks. I mean, they've been all over my For You page right now, which I really appreciate.
Adriana Caselotti walked so that you could run Miss Ma'am. This role would not exist for you if that role had not existed for her in 1937. I know that you've rewritten it, and it's going to be about a Snow White that don't need no man to save her. Did you ever stop to think that in this day and age, that is exactly what we want? There are women in this world who want that fairy tale because all they've known is the exact opposite. And there are women who don't want to hear about rescuing themselves because they do it all the time. You are talking down on the first full-length animated feature in history. Generations upon generations, decades upon decades of Snow White being Snow White. The way you're stomping around complaining, you're acting like a toddler. You are a toddler.
It's such a good TikTok. Everything she said is so accurate, right down to saying women do not want to rescue themselves, because that's what we do literally every single day. Thank you, feminism. Thank you very, very much. Maybe we don't want to see that in a movie.
How has Brett Cooper's faithful approach to Snow White amplified the backlash against Zegler's modernized vision? Cooper's approach to Snow White stands as a love letter to the Brothers Grimm tale and Disney's original animated classic. Her portrayal, grounded in traditional values like love, kindness, and resilience, has been praised for respecting the story's legacy. Fans have described her performance as heartfelt and authentic, with many expressing relief that someone is finally bringing Snow White back to life as they remembered her. By contrast, Zegler's modernized vision, which prioritizes a fiercely independent Snow White rejecting romantic love and leaning into themes of female leadership, has faced heavy criticism for being dismissive of the original narrative's core elements. Zegler's public statements, including her disdain for the 1937 film and her flippant attitude toward its themes, have made her a lightning rod for criticism. Cooper's reverent take on the story sharpens this criticism, positioning Zegler as out of touch with the very audience she was meant to captivate. Cooper's approach has won over a significant portion of fans who feel betrayed by Disney's increasingly woke reimaginings of classic tales. Her vocal love for the original story and her personal connection to its themes provide a stark contrast to Zegler's perceived apathy. The fact that Cooper openly cherishes the legacy of Snow White while Zegler admits to watching the original film only once, and then rejecting it, has created a clear divide. One actress honors the story's roots, while the other seeks to rewrite them. This divide has amplified the backlash against Zegler, as fans rally around Cooper as the true heir to the Snow White legacy. Online forums and social media platforms are rife with comparisons between the two actresses, with Cooper emerging as a symbol of resistance against Hollywood's trend of modernizing beloved characters to the detriment of their original charm. Cooper's grounded, optimistic demeanor contrasts sharply with Zegler's defensive and often dismissive responses to criticism. Where Cooper comes across as approachable and genuine, Zegler's statements, such as labeling elements of the original Snow White as creepy and outdated, have alienated her further. This difference in public perception has fueled the backlash against Zegler, as fans see Cooper as embodying the values they associate with Snow White: humility, kindness, and a connection to timeless storytelling. Cooper's success also taps into a broader cultural sentiment, a yearning for authenticity and nostalgia in an era of constant reinvention. Her interpretation of Snow White isn't just a performance, it's a cultural statement, a reclaiming of a story that many feel has been distorted by Disney's modern adaptations. For fans who are tired of Hollywood's perceived pandering, Cooper's approach is a breath of fresh air, and Zegler's vision is a bitter pill. By faithfully adhering to the original story, Cooper has inadvertently set a benchmark against which Zegler's modernized version is being judged and found lacking.
Brett Cooper has announced her exit from the Daily Wire. Listen, just from the very beginning, obviously everyone kind of knows the backstory. Last couple of weeks, there's just been some rumors floating around. Some people thought the rumors were ridiculous that she was leaving. Other people were saying that there was a lot of friction that was happening in the background at the Daily Wire. What we know for a fact is that Brett Cooper did in fact announce her exit from the Daily Wire on Tuesday while I was on a plane over to London. I had no Wi-Fi, so I landed and it was just an explosion of text messages. And, you know, I think because the exit came after there were so many rumors floating, people then assumed that all of the rumors were true. There were rumors that her best friend or her maid of honor in her wedding, which is true, obviously, Reagan Conrad would be taking over her show. And people were trying to deduce whether or not that meant that there was a lot of drama in the background. The Spectator did a summary. They're obviously quite respected, and they went through and clawed through all of the internet innuendo and noticed some things. Obviously, one big thing that has been noticed on the internet is that Brett seems to have deleted all of the photos that she had of her and her maid of honor from her profile. So that obviously signals to people that maybe some of that innuendo was true. And then the other aspect, which I was not even aware of until I read this article on The Spectator, was that apparently there was some movement. This is such a Gen Z thing, but I guess they were commenting on all of Brett's posts or something and telling her to wear blue on her last day if she's not allowed to talk about what happened. And then she wore blue. So who knows if she wore blue because it's a normal color to wear and I wear blue probably twice a week, or if she was trying to signal something. Anyways, the long conclusion of this is, as far as separations go, it appears to be as amicable as it can be. She made the announcement. It was quite sad. She did seem like she was upset in it. And then it kind of cut to Jeremy Boring, the CEO. He said nice things about her. And unless she wants to contribute something else or he wants to contribute something else, I don't think there's any reason to look further into it because everybody is moving on in their lives. And that gets me to the next point. Everyone's like, what will happen to Brett Cooper? Brett Cooper is going to be absolutely fine. I mean, beyond fine. Frankly, by the time I hit the ground, I must have had, and I am not kidding, 25 messages from people from all walks of my life asking me, can I have a contact with Brett Cooper? I'm talking about people that want to do her book, people that want to sign her for a show, people that want to sign her for speeches. But the broader conversation that's going to be really interesting, and I think this is, like, again, it's broader, so it's not even specifically about Daily Wire, but people are kind of debating if this is what the Daily Wire is doing, and it looks like it perhaps is, and if I'm speaking wrongly here, we're going to find out shortly, obviously, but if we are having this former or this maid of honor take over her show, is that going to work? And that is really interesting because, podcasting is a unique space. It is very personal. It's a new medium. When podcasting exploded, I think largely we can attribute that to Joe Rogan. Obviously, Daily Wire was one of the first companies to sort of try to carve out the space of podcasting and say we're gonna house a bunch of podcasters. I would say the Daily Wire and the Blaze kind of hit the ground running, and I think that nobody has really stopped to consider, can you just do that like late night TV? Can you do that like The View, where you can just keep swapping hosts and go, okay, well now it's going to be the comment section with someone else? Is the audience going to like that, or is the audience going to reject that? Now, if I'm just guessing, if this is my company and I'm running it, I'm going, no, I think podcasting is too personal. I think people sign up for a YouTube channel because they're signing up for that person. It remains to be seen. Obviously, they haven't done this yet. This will be an experiment for them. But I do think it starts a conversation about what it says about both Brett and the Daily Wire if they do it. Like, I think if I'm instructing what I would do, I would just create an entirely new show if they're going to bring in new talent. Otherwise, it kind of feels like, okay, well, is this just all scripted? Is that the real Brett Cooper? Did she just train to do this show and that's not actually her personality? I'm asking these questions. I know the answer to this. Obviously, it is her personality. That is very much Brett's personality behind the scenes. This is how she talks. She's very bubbly and very excited. So I don't know if that's like the message that you want to send, that we can just like train someone else like a monkey to do the exact same thing rather than just create a whole new show around somebody else. Also, she's super young. She's got a lot of gas left into the tank. She's going to be everywhere in 2025. So we just want to wish her a lot of luck.
Cooper's rendition of Snow White has not only reignited love for the classic tale, but also exposed the risks of straying too far from its core. The backlash against Zegler has intensified because Cooper's approach proves that audiences are still deeply connected to traditional storytelling and resistant to unnecessary changes. Why does Rachel Zegler view Brett Cooper's portrayal as a threat? And how does this reflect on her own comments about the original Snow White?
I like the beginning.
In time, a prince would come. Once upon a time, but now that time
brings me back to my childhood.
is gone.
No freaking way! No! Yo! Brett Cooper?
No way. Hold on. So Brett Cooper, if you were watching this, Isaac cried.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a lot of millions of men that cried.
Yeah.
But Isaac is one of them. But this says Snow White and the Evil Queen coming Bentkey. I guess that's like the production company they have.
No, that's their new children's program. So Daily Wire just released an entire children's section.
Okay, yeah, you're right. But it's coming in 2024, which the other Snow White movie is supposed to come in 2024 as well.
She's so hot.
Is she?
I'm a narcissist. Original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Okay.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. That people will assume is a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
I say, if I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
And we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
It's really very simple. Rachel Zegler may view Brett Cooper's portrayal of Snow White as a threat because Cooper's faithful interpretation directly challenges Zegler's modernized vision and exposes the controversial nature of her own approach. Cooper's portrayal, steeped in reverence for the original story and its timeless values, stands in stark contrast to Zegler's dismissal of the 1937 classic as outdated and creepy. This divergence not only invites unfavorable comparisons, but also undermines Zegler's attempts to redefine the character, leaving her defensive and arguably insecure. Zegler's version of Snow White emphasizes independence and leadership, rejecting the romantic and traditional themes central to the original tale. However, Cooper's portrayal reaffirms the enduring appeal of these very elements. By embracing the original character's innocence, kindness, and belief in love, Cooper has tapped into the nostalgia and affection of fans who cherish the story's legacy. For Zegler, this stark contrast poses a significant threat. It highlights how far her interpretation deviates from what many fans hold dear. Cooper's success has sparked a broader conversation about the value of preserving classic storytelling versus reimagining it for modern audiences. For Zegler, this backlash threatens not just her portrayal of Snow White, but her public image as an advocate for progressive storytelling. It forces her to confront the possibility that audiences may not be as receptive to her vision as she anticipated. Zegler's public statements about the original Snow White have played a significant role in fueling the backlash against her. By dismissing the 1937 film as irrelevant to modern audiences and criticizing its focus on love and romance, she has alienated a core segment of fans. Her admission that she watched the original movie only once and hated it further reinforced perceptions that she lacks respect for the character's legacy. In contrast, Cooper's reverence for the original story and her personal connection to its themes position her as a champion of tradition. This contrast makes Zegler's comments appear dismissive and out of touch. Fans who were already skeptical of Zegler's approach now see Cooper as a more authentic and respectful steward of the Snow White legacy, intensifying the scrutiny on Zegler's interpretation. The stark difference in how the two actresses approach Snow White reflects a deeper ideological clash. Zegler's interpretation aligns with modern feminist ideals, emphasizing agency and leadership over traditional fairy tale romance. While this approach may resonate with some, it has also been criticized for undermining the character's original charm. Cooper, on the other hand, represents a return to storytelling rooted in timeless values, which appeals to fans disillusioned by Hollywood's perceived push for woke reimaginings. This ideological clash turns Cooper into a symbolic threat to Zegler's vision. By proving that a faithful portrayal of Snow White can still captivate audiences, Cooper challenges the necessity of Zegler's modernized narrative, leaving Zegler's creative choices open to intense scrutiny. Zegler's reactions to Cooper's portrayal may also reflect professional rivalry. Cooper's success as an actress stepping into a beloved role, despite being known primarily as a YouTuber, contrasts with Zegler's struggles to win over audiences as a rising Hollywood star. This dynamic could fuel insecurities for Zegler, who may feel overshadowed by Cooper's ability to capture public admiration with a more traditional approach. Moreover, Zegler's defensive stance, lashing out at Cooper's portrayal, amplifies perceptions of her being overly critical and dismissive. Instead of focusing on her own strengths, Zegler's criticism of Cooper risks coming across as petty, further eroding her credibility among fans. Cooper's portrayal has been celebrated for bringing Snow White back to life in a way that feels genuine and heartfelt. Fans have praised her ability to embody the character's essence while honoring the story's roots. This positive reception contrasts sharply with the divisive response to Zegler's comments and performance. The more Cooper is celebrated, the more Zegler's approach is cast in a negative light, creating a feedback loop that heightens the tension between the two actresses. Zegler's view of Cooper's portrayal as a threat underscores her own insecurities about the reception of her interpretation of Snow White. It suggests that Zegler is acutely aware of the backlash her modernized vision has faced and feels defensive about being overshadowed by a more traditional take on the character. Her criticism of Cooper can be seen as an attempt to deflect attention from her own controversial choices, but it risks backfiring by reinforcing perceptions of her being disconnected from the audience's expectations.
Somebody tweeted out and said, "I like learning about the Snow White movie and realizing that Peter Dinklage took roles away from hardworking actors who have dwarfism so that he can pretend that he helped others by bitching." And then another person said, "Hey Snow White fans, if you were looking forward to the new live-action Snow White and don't know the whole story, you can thank Peter Dinklage for this. He felt threatened by anybody his height getting a dwarf role because people might realize that he is overrated." So obviously, I had to look into this. I did a little Google searching, and I found this article from 2022. Peter Dinklage says the seven dwarfs are an insult, but the reality is more complex. So the article says, during a conversation regarding Disney's upcoming live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Dinklage praised Disney for casting a Latina actress as Snow White, but condemned them for continuing to present what he believed were outdated stereotypes. Now, this interview happened in January of 2022. It was published in February, but this happened in January. The article goes on, and they quote Dinklage saying, literally, no offense to anything. No, you're taking offense. But I was sort of taken aback.
I'm really emotional. I'm also really tired.
Even more bad news for Disney's Snow White remake coming out next year.
I'm a narcissist.
There's another Snow White movie competing with it. It's called Snow White and the Evil Queen, and the producer promises to be more faithful to the spirit of the original animated classic.
Walt once said about Snow White, to me, I thought it was the perfect story. Unfortunately, the company Disney founded doesn't agree with their founder and visionary.
Once upon a time.
Who is this? I like the beginning.
In time, a prince would come. Once upon a time, but now that time
Brings me back to my childhood.
is gone.
No freaking way! No! Yo! Brett Cooper?
And that's me. I'm Snow White.
It's so over for Disney because the conservative media company Daily Wire is making their very own rendition of Snow White starring Brett Cooper. It's a Snow White showdown, y'all. And not just that, they're also launching a rival children's network called Bent Key. And whether or not you're excited by the prospect of watching entertainment produced by a conservative company, I have to commend Daily Wire for putting their money where their mouth is.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
Like sometimes I wonder, how do they cast these people for those movies?
What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Who here thought they had permission to say anything critical?
You have one job. Just take the source material and just remake it. That's it, and you will win. Everybody's gonna go watch the movie.
Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro are doing their own live-action remake of Snow White with Brett Cooper as Snow White because she's like West End trained, right? So she's a very well trained, supposedly a very well trained actor who can sing. Apparently, it's like the triple threat: podcast, act, sing. Right. And they announced it the other week. It's going to be coming out next year.
God, I hope they'd slay Disney. Crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
Why were you crying?
It's so cool. I'm literally the one in that trailer, and I'm still so excited, and I get chills.
There I am, Gary, there I am.
The whole thing is just so cool. The moment when the music starts to crescendo as I turn around. When I first heard the music, I was like, stop right there. That's just so amazing.
Brett Cooper, a rising conservative star from the Daily Wire, has taken over the role of Snow White, and the fallout has been nothing short of explosive. This casting change has sent shockwaves through social media, with fans passionately picking sides in what's quickly becoming the most divisive remake in Disney history.
With all the backlash surrounding the upcoming Disney live adaptation of Snow White, the market is primed for someone to step in and tell a proper Snow White story. The Daily Wire has picked up the ball and ran with it, releasing a teaser trailer for Snow White and the Evil Queen, which will release on their streaming service called Bent Key.
Sounds great. Here's our Snow White.
By 2030, it's predicted that 45% of women will be unmarried and childless. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because we've been told that, men are trash and that our career is the only thing that matters and that marriage and children will inhibit that, which is unnatural. That is biologically unnatural for women.
That does sound great.
Cooper, known for her unapologetic views and rejection of woke narratives, is stepping into a role that many thought belonged to Rachel Zegler, who had her own controversial vision for the iconic princess. While Zegler pushed for a modernized Snow White,
Not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
one without Prince Charming and centered on female empowerment, many fans were left outraged. To them, her interpretation wasn't a refreshing update. It was a complete betrayal of the timeless fairy tale they cherished.
And if you hear it echoing, your wish will soon come true.
Snow White, a story that had been passed down for generations, symbolized romance, innocence, and the magic of true love. Zegler's decision to strip away the prince and turn Snow White into a self-reliant leader wasn't just a new direction. It was seen as an unnecessary rewriting of a story that, for many, was perfect as it was. Adding fuel to the fire were Zegler's public statements, where she didn't hold back from criticizing the original narrative. She called the 1937 Snow White outdated, dismissing the fairy tale's portrayal of love and happily ever after as irrelevant in today's world. But perhaps the most controversial of all was her labeling of Prince Charming as a creepy stalker, casting the classic love interest in a sinister light that few fans appreciated. These comments weren't viewed as bold or empowering by much of the audience. Instead, they felt like a direct attack on the nostalgia and emotional connection people have to the original story.
And now this is competition, right? This is America. If you don't want to see the woke Disney film, you have every opportunity now to go see this Daily Wire film.
Variety is the spice of life. Choice is great. Some kids, parents, families, young women might prefer the Rachel Zegler version. Some might want to watch the more stereotypical prince and princess fantasy or whatever it is, and they can watch the original, or they can watch the Daily Wire version, or you can watch all of them and decide what you like best, and that's fine and good. I think it is worth commenting on that the Daily Wire is doing something that's very interesting in trying to specifically, instead of just complaining that mainstream pop culture and entertainment is hostile to conservative values.
And there you have it. Rachel Zegler versus Brett Cooper, a clash of visions and ideologies. Zegler's harsh criticism of Cooper's Snow White may stem from insecurity or a deep fear of being overshadowed, while Cooper's faithful portrayal has gained massive support, exposing cracks in Zegler's modernized approach. This isn't just about two actresses, it's a cultural battle over tradition versus innovation, and what we really want from our stories. Will Disney's Snow White flop under the controversy, or will the Daily Wire's old school take prove stronger? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Are you Team Zegler or Team Cooper? Don't hold back, and make sure to subscribe to Woke Informant for more unfiltered takes on Hollywood's wildest controversies. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you're being told, and who's telling them.